Apparently, George Zinn had to receive medical treatment following that little fracas. And he told multiple nurses and doctors that he did it because he was being paid to do it. He was going to receive payment. He didn't know from who.
Well, something tells me that the payment was not going to come from Tyler Robinson. I gotta say, there's all these articles coming in saying, you know, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson peddling in dangerous conspiracy theories about Charlie Kirk being opposed to Israel in the final months of his life. All these dangerous conspiracies, questioning what this means. And I'll just say that the first person who peddled in these dangerous conspiracies right here. Go look at the timeline. Go look at the timeline. Go look at Netanyahu's post that day. Who was the first person calling this out as being kind of odd and a little bit suspicious? Who was the first person, you know? I'm the one pedaling the bike here. But Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, I've got to say, they've got a much bigger audience. They've been digging much further into this subject, and I hope that they have much better security than I do. Tucker Carlson, he went out and he had this to say in a new video. Let's take a look.
To people around him, he did not like Bibi Netanyahu, and he said that to me many times, and he said to people around him many times. He felt that Bibi Netanyahu was a very destructive force. He was appalled by what was happening.
Now, why are people saying that that Charlie Kirk loved Netanyahu so much? I got to say, they published the letter. Netanyahu publishes the letter from Charlie Kirk, right? The whole letter, people try to pass it off as like, actually, no, this is proof that Charlie loved Israel. The whole letter is Charlie Kirk saying to Netanyahu, the prime minister of a country who he admittedly was scared of and feared for his life because of. The whole letter is basically Charlie Kirk saying like, hey, look, respectfully, you can't force us to be your bitch anymore. Respectfully, you can't expect us to defend the indefensible. Respectfully, find someone else for this job. You know, go hire some of these e-girl OF girls to bring to Jerusalem because TPUSA isn't going to be a part of this anymore. Respectfully. That's basically what the letter was. And then you have these like simple-minded, ape-like commentators online who are saying like, oh no, well, actually, because this was written in a certain tone, it means that Charlie Kirk still loved Israel. Well, you gotta read between the lines of what he's actually saying. You have to understand that he was fearing quite a bit as he was writing this letter. And you got to actually look at what the letter said. What was the message of the letter? The message of the letter is not like, yes, sir, we're going to continue to do your propaganda. Yes, sir, we're going to keep. Can I have another $7,000, sir? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. No, that's not what the letter was. Let's continue.
In Gaza, he was above all resentful that he believed Netanyahu was using the United States to prosecute his wars for the benefit of his country, and that it was shameful and embarrassing and bad for the United States, and he resented it. Didn't hate Netanyahu. He wasn't out there with a placard saying that, but he certainly expressed that to me and a lot of other people. And there's no question that Bibi's defenders on the internet will call me a liar or a kook, but that's a fact. And enough text messages exist that I think it can probably be verified in pretty short order. Not that it needs to be, because that is true. Shortly after that speech, there was a very intense attack on Charlie, and to some extent on me, not that I really noticed. But on him, I have no donors. He had $100 million worth of donors. And so, because he was involved in a different project from just yapping on the internet, which is what I do for a living, he was dependent to a great extent on his donors, of course. It's a nonprofit. And they went after him and tormented him. Not all, of course. Many were supportive, but the ones who were offended by my speech, and there was a small, very intense group who were, tormented Charlie Kirk until the day he died.
Now, what I want you to remember about this is, according to multiple sources, and Candace Owens has called for the release of these clips, by the way. Before Tucker went out and he went on this tear at a TPUSA event about Epstein, about Israel, he said that Americans who serve in the IDF should be deported, lose their citizenship. Before this all happened, Tucker went to Charlie behind the scenes, behind the curtain, and he said, look, I know you're getting a lot of pressure right now. I know you're under terrifying levels of pressure. I'm not going to go so hard today. I'm not going to Epstein to Israel. I'm going to play it cool. And Charlie reportedly, allegedly, he said, nah, screw it. Just do whatever you want. Say whatever you want. Go as hard as you want. I don't care. At those final moments, Charlie was gung-ho in bringing all of the opinions to the forefront. He wasn't trying to silence anyone. He didn't care what his donors were saying. His donors had threatened him for months and months. He'd already written that letter to Netanyahu. He said, no, say whatever you want. And then Tucker did. And the blowback from the donors was immense, as we now know. Now, after that took place, and I'm just highlighting this stuff before we get into the meat and potatoes of this story, okay? After that took place, Candace Owens came out and said, essentially, Tucker and I have been threatened, okay?
Do not accept, and do you guys, that Charlie Kirk lost his life because he really pissed off the trans lobby. It terrifies me to think that on the day that Charlie died, I got multiple phone calls from people who said that me and Tucker should lay low because we're also on the list. And they never told us who specifically told them that, by the way.
So then that happened. So basically, they're getting added to a certain list. They're getting threatened because they're talking about this. They're exposing the truth. Now, if they were saying something crazy, if they were saying something so easy to disprove, then why would they be put on a list? Why would they be threatened? Why would they be silenced? The only reason why people are calling to silence Tucker, Candace, and many more regarding this story is because they hit the nail on the head. Maybe not at every corner, maybe not with every little fine point, but that's what happens when you are a journalist digging into a story. No one is giving you answers. The FBI is not giving us answers. The media surely is not doing their job, the mainstream media. So this is up to a group of, online personalities, friends of Charlie, a few and far between, by the way, as you're about to find out. And I think that they've done a pretty damn good job of it. Now, the last thing I want to get into and I want to react to before we break down the story of today is that, and this got no attention whatsoever. I don't know why this was just ignored, but this was on the final day of Candace Owens' live streams before she took a 2-week vacation. I don't know why this received no attention. Now, again, I think I can't say for certain, but I think I was one of the first people online on Twitter who was talking about George Zinn and was talking about, wow, did we just see a false flag or whatever, a patsy? And I started to dig into this guy and I started to look at his history. I started to post this stuff. I don't know why this did not get an equal amount of attention, but what Candace Owens reveals here is shocking, to say the least.
On the day of Charlie Kirk's assassination, immediately George Zinn gets up and says, I did it. And he kind of gets dragged. Well, apparently George Zinn had to receive medical treatment following that little fracas. And he told multiple nurses and doctors that he did it because he was being paid to do it. He said he had not been paid yet.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that like obstruction of justice? You have this horrific event that takes place. Police in that moment are obviously tasked with the duty of finding whoever was responsible for that. And Now you have this George Zinn character that admits to obstructing justice, seemingly. Justice would be finding the perpetrator. George Zinn obstructed that effort by falsely claiming that he was the party responsible. Is that not a crime? I don't know. I don't know what the Utah state law has to say, but wow.
He was going to receive payment. He didn't know from who. That's interesting. Decoy boy told medical staff, apparently he was just singing, just telling everybody who would listen that he did it because payment was going to be promised to him if he did do it.
It just seems like we've totally not heard this in the mainstream media. What if the mainstream media is just, don't you think this would be the number one story? Don't you think it'd be like, wow, let's interview the nurses who were told by Zinn that he was going to be paid to obstruct justice and act as a decoy, right? But we've had nothing. In fact, I think you're labeled as some unsavory character if you even mention the name George Zinn in the media.
What does that tell us? We should definitely dig into George Zinn. We should definitely try to confirm this relatively strong tip that he has.
Yeah, someone in the chat said, obstruction of justice, more like an accessory to murder. Allegedly.
Connections to the feds, because it would be very interesting if the feds were going to pay George Zinn. I'm not saying they are, but yeah, why wouldn't he know? I mean, make that make sense. Why wouldn't George Zinn know where the payment was coming from?
Well, something tells me that the payment was not going to come from Tyler Robinson. Something tells me.